This week at Hey the Parents, we're talking all about dinks. No, we aren't talking about Jawas from Spaceballs, but on this episode, we're talking all about double income, no kids. We're doing a special episode on understanding friends without kids. Parenting isn't for everyone, and that's okay. So on this episode, we'll take a look at double income, no kids lifestyle and try to tackle those preconceived notions and have a conversation with our special guest, Leigh. Because in Hey the Parents, it's an honest discussion about raising kids. I'm Michael Haidt.
I'm Sarah D.
And I'm Mike Levine.
Kids don't come with a handbook, so we need your help.
Where do babies come from?
Where do you think they come from?
Is this a kissing book?
Mama! Mama!
What?
Hi.
I learned it by watching you.
There are no rules in this house. Not like a regular mom. I'm a cool mom.
We sent them to the best boarding schools. We hired the best nannies. We did everything right.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
No drinking, no drugs, no kissing, no tattoos, no piercings, no ritual animal slaughters of any kind.
Together, we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
This is Hey Other Parents, an honest, messy, imperfect show for raising kids.
Hey, it's us again. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hey, Sarah D.
What's going on? Hey there. how
Toodly
you doing?
do. So,
We have someone else in the room with us today.
we do. Hello, Leigh.
Hello. Hi, Michael and Sarah.
All right, so we have a special guest today. This is fantastic. We're very excited. We're so glad you guys came to hang out with us as we figure out this parenting thing. So whether you're in the car, folding laundry, cooking dinner, getting organized, or on the go, we know that you have a lot of choice for podcasts out there, so thank you for listening to ours. We'd like to send a big welcome to our new moms and dads listening, a big hearty hello to the returning listeners who are back to put up with us for yet another episode. So if this is your first time joining us on this podcast, Hey the Parents, it is a chance for a few of us parents who decide that we need to join our efforts together to try and get through this, as we call it, a survival course. We pick a different theme, a different topic each week, where we discuss it from the standpoint of when we were younger, what we grew up with our own parents, and then we shift that over to now as adults, where we certainly did not get a handbook with our own kids. We talk about what we go through, we share some of our experiences, and we learn from each other, and every week we feel a little bit better because we have each other, we have all of you. So if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, we'll tell you a little later in the show on how you get in touch with us here. And without further ado, we're going to jump right into the main part of this podcast, and that entails a topic of the week. So Sarah D, what are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about the DINK lifestyle. What does that mean to be a DINK? And how can we as multi-people families incorporate our two family friends?
I love this. So we're excited. So this is going to be a great episode. So we have Leigh. Leigh is patiently waiting. She said hello, and that's all she got out so far. But what we really want to do, so in general, like just to get this right off the bat, we know that we did an episode last season on growing families. And what we like to do is occasionally we want to do topics and episodes where we kind of focus or put a spotlight on things where people just don't talk about certain things. And for whatever reason, there is definitely some preconceived notions and things that go along with friends that choose not to have kids. And I'm sure there's plenty of awkward conversations that they encounter. And truthfully, it's a choice, and there's nothing wrong with that. So we want to get that right off the top of the episode, that this is a positive episode, and we're looking to shed some light, kind of get into some things that maybe aren't typically talked about, and make it something that people do talk about, because we love our friends, and we know that our kids have a kick butt aunt and uncle in the house, and we're very excited that we are friends with Leigh and James. But we have Leigh here. James has kind of been sent away. Her husband's been sent away. So we have this double income, no kids, but we have Leigh here. So this is gonna be a fun episode. So hello again, Leigh.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this episode. I actually don't talk about the fact that I don't have kids often. And sometimes it is because of people's reactions that I just don't want to get into the conversations and the questions and things like that. But I do wish that I had that growing up, that I heard of people deciding not to have children. And so thank you. Thank you for doing this.
No, this is really cool. I'm excited because like the thing is like when you guys, it's funny because like, I mean, we obviously as children, like, you know, you have a different mentality on things, of course, but like as you're going through like the game of life and you're rolling, you know, you're on the spinner and you're rolling all tens, then you're getting married and like people are like, you're engaged. Like, oh, when are you getting married? When's the date? Where's the, you know, where it's happening? Oh, what do you know, what's this? What's that? And then of course, then that's over. And then the next question is like, when are you having kids?
Yeah.
And then that was like, I'm sure you probably got nailed with that question like 1,000 times.
Oddly enough, so James and I had decided not to have children before we even got married. It was one of the things that helped us decide that we should get married because we were on the same page with that. I'd had experiences where I dated guys who wanted a family. And I didn't realize at the time. I was like, that's something we could talk about later. That's something like in my head, I just kept pushing it down the road. And after meeting James and having conversations with him, it came to like me having an epiphany of like, holy cow, I don't want children. I've actually never wanted children. And I mean, even like, those movie moments where you have the montage, I had that like looking back at my childhood and like all the girls playing with dolls. And I'm like, oh, why are you doing that? You
Look at me, I have my hands free.
Like, why would you do that? So it was
Right.
just exactly. So I had that moment of like all the times where I had friends who wanted to like play imagination and things like that. I would always imagine myself with a career and like doing things, and they're like, "I'm a mom," and I'm like,
but that's like
okay,
a pretty healthy
that's
thing that you
actually-
guys like aside from obviously like dealing with all the nonsense, like it feels like a pretty healthy thing to like express that that's what your desires are and what you want. And then having like someone you're not dating, you're married now, but having someone that you were dating at the time, like having that conversation so that like there wasn't a more awkward conversation later or something that might have been like a deal breaker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's actually what I've found out from like other friends of mine that, they both got into it thinking that that's what they wanted to do and they wanted to have a family. But then the longer they were together, the more they either found that they didn't want to have a family with that person or they just didn't want children. And now they're in a marriage and have that problem of like, do I decide, okay, I'm going to have children because it's what my partner really wants, or do we say this is it, we call it quits? And yeah, it's been interesting to see from like the outside. And, every once in a while, I kind of just wonder, like, did you ever have those conversations before you got married?
Right. I think that's like super important to have those conversations prior to getting married. And then also too, like you had touched upon something. I think for women in general, there's this big pressure to have children and like, like to get married, to pick a fence, to have children. And for some of us, that's where we always want to be. I think I too, growing up, wasn't necessarily like in love with babies and things like that. It wasn't until actually, I got married and, it was like, okay, I'm gonna have kids. So it wasn't ever off the table, but I wasn't also like a very passionate person prior to having children about babies, So I could definitely see that like where as a woman, you probably also get like some side eye or some judgment in that like feeling that you might have or expressing yourself saying that, no, I don't want children.
Yes, I definitely do. I've had, just interesting conversations with different people all throughout my life. Sometimes it's like the friend gathering where, actually Michael and I are better friends because when all of the friends got together, I would hang out with the guys. Right. I just, there's so many things about me that are not like the typical wife or homemaker. So
yeah, you're awesome.
Like
that's fun.
Thanks. So that idea of like hanging out in the kitchen and doing stuff like that, I hate the kitchen. It is my least favorite room in the house. So it's just been like interesting for me to have like these conversations throughout, like, and just people finding out, oh wow, this is just another thing that she's not like everyone's expectations. And sometimes like, I obviously embrace it all the time. And sometimes I can embrace it with others and share that and talk about it with others. And sometimes it's just, you can kind of read the room and it's not going to go over well. It's not going to be accepted, and it's not worth trying to further that conversation.
That's wild because like, it's not like, because obviously we've had conversations like, off this, but like, it's not about other people. It's about your decision.
So oddly enough, I find it that other people do find it about themselves.
Right.
That they think that me deciding not to have children means I don't think anybody should have children. And that is not the case at all. I think there are fantastic parents out there, and I'm really happy that they decided to become parents. And I think that I would not be one of those fantastic parents.
But that's like a healthy thing to like think about, right? Like
Exactly.
you know for certain it's not something you want.
Knowing yourself well enough to say that, and obviously there was a time where I didn't know myself well enough, where I thought like, oh, that's going to be a later me thing. I'm going to eventually do that. And having that moment of going, oh wow, I really don't want this. So I should not do this just because other people think I should.
Is it like something that like when you was it a harder conversation like with your family, or do you find it to be like, is it more of like with your family it's one thing, but like with other people it's like, oh, here we go again?
I never told my dad because of how important it was for him having children, and like his whole world was his children. So I never told him. He eventually figured it out. He eventually like found out from his sister, because my aunt was the type who, she said it to everyone. She had a running joke of her oldest daughter was going to name her children Maytag, because she promised that when she has kids, she'll buy her a washer and dryer.
Wow.
Yes. So like it was, she was that aunt who every time, when are you having kids? When are you having kids? And I like finally got tired of like, oh, I don't know. And like, I'm not having kids. And she's like, oh. And I was genuinely surprised at the conversation that I had with her. She was way more receptive to it than I thought. And she said like, she's like, good for you.
It's almost like, I mean, in some ways, it reminds me almost like the conversation like with my sister, with like kind of coming out in a way, and like that kind of like some of those like almost like the feeling of like the stress of disappointing people in a sense, or like the feeling that like, here we go, now I got to deal with this. Now is like that going to put a problem in our relationship, you know, in some way. And like this is something completely different, but like in some ways, it does pose the point of like how are people going to react? Yeah. And do you have to safeguard? Do you need to safeguard other people's feelings because of the situation?
And I do feel like the only person I really wanted to protect was my dad. I didn't want him to think that I was making a choice because I didn't think he should have made that choice. Because it was his best decision. Like, of course. Fantastic dad. I'm amazing. No, I'm kidding. But he was born to be a dad. And
that's awesome.
The odds were stacked against him. He didn't have to turn out to be a great dad, so it was just amazing for him to experience that, and like not have the upbringing that he had, like to be able to go like this is how you don't raise children, and I'm going to do better. And he did. But my mom I did tell, and not surprised by her reaction, because my mom and I are very frank with each other and know each other well. So when I told my mom, she was like, oh good, you know, okay, good. So that was really nice.
Because we threw out your old rocking horse. No, I'm kidding. So what about like what are there? Do you think like there's some common misconceptions that like people have, or like that you've experienced?
I should be maternal. I should have that like, you know, nurturing nature, and should treat other people that way. And yes, I don't have that.
What a weird like way to like to really genderize things. That's really crazy.
Right? It is interesting too, because as a teacher, you know, students are more familiar with female teachers. And so I think that they do get that, you know, nurturing aspect when they're in the classroom. And while I have my way of nurturing, it is different though. And sometimes I do think about, you know, the other male teachers, and do they teach in a style that I teach? Does my style match more with that? And, you know, just things to ponder. Have I ever like went further and asked more questions? No. But I get that people like my nephews recently, which I'm glad that they finally started telling me this, but my nephews have been telling me that they were afraid of me when they were children.
Congratulations.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm like,
that's interesting.
Yep. And it's more of like, they were wild, and they would come over to like the house that I lived in and want to play with my things. And I'm like, I just don't want you to break all of my things, because I know I'm going to be the one who has to buy it to replace it. Like, I can't have a 5-year-old replace it, you know. So I'd go over the rules with them before they played with anything. I would be the one who set them down and said, like, if you want to do this, you have to do it this way. Otherwise, you know, bring your own toys and we'll play with them here. So that's
interesting
scary.
too, because that's like a you know, that's like an interesting perspective too, because like when you think about dealing with people who have kids and you don't, like, you know, obviously there's like all thousands of different ways to raise your kids, but like there's like, you know, there's a looseness to some, you know, What do they call that? Like, like light parenting or loose, like they want to, sometimes parents want to be more their friends and they want to be the parents. And then like, it's unfair to put that on you. And especially when you don't have your own kids, you're like, these toys are mine. So don't break these.
Right, but I think that's healthy because Mike and I were talking about this prior to the show, is that I also too I know a couple that is also, I guess they don't call themselves dinks, but they would be dinks, and they're an older couple. And we also have a lot of friends that are males that are single right now currently. One gentleman probably will not get married. I think he's a very happy single life. And the thing is that I think it's healthy for children to be around other people with different lifestyles and also listening to a different set of rules. Like, so when my kids were younger and we go to the doctor's office, I would say, look, this is not a running around place. People don't feel good. This is sitting down. This is quiet. The library as well is fun, but we're also not playing very loudly. So certainly going over to an aunt or an uncle or house where you're not allowed to touch everything, or you're not allowed to just play with any old thing, and we have to respect things. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually teaching them boundaries.
It's like a healthy thing.
Yeah,
yes.
It's a healthy thing.
I've even found in teaching that, like, so when I worked in the juvenile detention center, there was a lot of students who were difficult in other classrooms that weren't difficult in mine. And I think that was because I set boundaries and I wasn't, like, unexpected. I wasn't chaotic. So they knew what they were going to get with me. They knew how I was going to respond. Like, I was predictable to them. And that was, in some cases, their experience with adults was not like that. And so they genuinely appreciated that they knew what they were going to get with me and that I was going to set boundaries with them. And I mean, even in my teaching career here, like I still find that with certain students who have parents or have adults who just let them run wild or just let them do whatever they want. They do actually want somebody to say, no, this was the line and you have crossed it. Yeah. And there are consequences to that.
So that like leads like to another question in the sense, like what are some of like the benefits of choosing not to have children that's helped you like in your career or with yourself? Because so like, for example, we, in our job as well, we're very like, like we're raising children and we're tired and we don't mean to bring stress into our daily lives and things like that. Do you think not having children allows you as a teacher to be able to be like, to give them your full attention in some ways,
Yes. So I know me personally, time management has never been a strong suit, and being able to separate things sometimes is a struggle for me. So for me to not have children, but to still deal with other people's children, if I had to deal with mine and other people's, I know I would not be good at both, and most likely both of them would suffer because of it. And I want to be very clear, that is a me thing, because I've seen amazing, amazing teachers who have children and balance both and do amazing things with their own children and with the children that are in their care and in their classroom. So I notice it is a me thing that I can't balance that. And I'm happy that I made that decision and that I recognize my, weaknesses or my flaws, like, and instead turn it into something that is a strength for me.
Do you find like people like sometimes like I wonder like if people that don't have the responsibility of kids, like there's an assumption that they have like all this free time and that like do you think that sometimes like you're put on, like people come to you with extra work or like extra requests? It doesn't matter at work, but it's in life in general, because you're like, oh, you're probably free. You're probably.
I personally don't feel that a lot. I do take on more things, and sometimes I see like colleagues of mine who have children who are being asked to do certain things, and I know that I'm available. I'll speak up and be like, oh, hey, I can grab that. I can do that. but I don't feel like people come to me like, oh, well, you don't have children, so you can do this. When I worked in retail, though, it was more likely that I was going to be asked to do overtime, or I was asked to pick up people's shifts, because the expectation was that I could just juggle whatever I needed to juggle because I didn't have children.
So more like in like an hourly kind of thing, like it might be different role, different situation.
Yes.
Hey, what about I know this is like obviously everybody's different, but like since you kind of take on more stuff, like do you find that like obviously like a commute helps everyone's mental state, but like do you find like when you're taking on these other things, do you feel like when you get home you kind of are just like do you feel like you need to like de-stress a little bit, or like do you feel like you kind of like carrying the like your work life into your because like sometimes like as a parent, like I'll come home and I'll be like, oh, I didn't save anything in the reservoir for the kids. I need to I need to censor myself in a big way because I'm running on steam right now and I feel like I'm gonna snap at somebody. I'm like, that's not cool. I gotta like get it together. Right. But I mean that's like any relationship really. But I mean
I do have a hard time shutting off work. And like these are conversations that I've had with James a lot too, where he had a job that was really stressful and very demanding, and I kept like trying to tell him like, you have to set boundaries with your job. Then like you have to tell them to stop. You have to, and then he would turn to me and like, well, you don't do that. Like you will work late into the night and things like that. And I'm like, I'm not the one who's complaining though about my job. Like, and that is the thing is like, there are a lot of things about my job that I find very interesting. And sometimes I will go into like a hyper focus on like, oh, this is really interesting to me. I want to look into this more. Maybe I'm going to do this in the classroom. And then I will like just go with it and not realize that like, hey, this is 2 hours after dinner. And
right.
Could have been playing a video game or doing something or... But
and what about like shared hobbies? Like, do you feel like I know that you guys have a lot you guys do in common, so that's really
James
cool.
And I have a lot in common, so like that has been, and honestly, I feel like that would, for some other couples, I've seen like you know, especially if you have children really early, you forget about like what you had in common at first, or maybe that has started to shift. So I think with James, it was really important for us to have something that we share that we can do together, and that we have several things that we share and love to do together. So I mean, obviously, yes, Michael knows we play D&D and other
heck yeah,
Dungeons and Dragons, other games, Call of Cthulhu, and we have a huge board game collection. We like to play games, and we've made that a big part of our lives. We also really like, you know, going on trips. So we've been to a whole bunch of national parks. We go to different kind of gaming conventions, still a trip, and also more gaming. So yeah, we really found things that we can share together.
That's cool because like in some ways I feel like, I know it sounds kind of odd, but like in some ways I wonder if like, you know, what you're saying is like a healthy thought for like people that end up having kids and become empty nesters that are like, oh, I gotta date my spouse again. Like we gotta hang out. Yeah. You know, like that's it's like you've kind of figured that out pretty early on how to keep that. You know, that's an important stage in any relationship, is really kind of like finding the me, finding the you, and then finding the us, and like having that bond and things together, and you know, having like, you know, your own spot in the house to kind of like, you know, do your thing, but also like find things that you guys do together, you know?
Exactly.
Right. And like, how do you find like, you know, like, so you're around the same age as us. So when you started off earlier and everyone was starting families and things like that, like how did that like shape your relationships and friendships with people that you were, you know, like were there when they first got married and started having children? Like, did you feel like you fell to the wayside? Do you feel like you got more involved? Like, you know, like I'm
not going to sugarcoat it at all. I definitely, and this was, I think, a conscious decision for me. I don't know if it was a conscious decision for my friends. But it was I chose to not have children. I don't always want to be around other people's children either. So there have been a lot of friends that I wouldn't say I lost. I keep in touch with them in some way, but the idea sometimes of like getting called up and like, hey, do you want to come hang out with us? And I'm like, maybe. And I do see it as a two-way street. I do not take it personally, and I really like the friends that I've had that I've been able to have that conversation with and say like, you know, maybe just not now, but maybe later. Like, I don't want to lose you as a friend, but I think at this point it's not something that we're going to share. Like, if I come over and you just had a baby, or, you know, your child is 3 and all you're doing is talking about your child, and your whole world right now is everything related to that, then we're not going to have that commonality to talk about. We're not going to have any, you know, like good conversations. It's just going to be like, here's an update of my life and here's an update of your life, and then we go our separate ways.
Right.
So I do have friends who we just make sure every once in a while we connect, either in person or, you know, phone calls for hours, that kind of thing. And, you know, we'll see where it goes from there. But again, I'm not trying to put pressure on it, and I'm not asking them to put pressure on it. It's just, this is your reality and this is my reality. And right now it just doesn't mesh.
Is there like is there like a DINK community, like where like, not like support group,
I feel
but
like
like,
it does.
you know, like a group of people like.
Now
where
you're
it's
really
like...
making me think of Spaceballs, I swear.
Yes. We have a song.
Yes, as you all wear like little robes. No, but like, you know, is there a community that is readily available? Because like,
I wouldn't say
you know.
it's a like. I wouldn't say it's a genuine like thought out community
where people have like no back seats on their cars automatically.
Right.
You just go around the parking lot to check that.
Just throw the back seat out of the car.
But it comes about naturally then, because while all my friends are celebrating, you know, they're having birthday parties and inviting people to that, I'm inviting people over to my house to play games.
Correct.
And the people I'm inviting over to my house usually don't have children.
Okay.
So yeah, it does come about naturally, where you just, because you have free time together, you can make those connections easier.
So like-minded finds like-minded, yeah.
Yes, and it's really hard sometimes just to arrange things with people who have kids. Like,
Yeah.
I've seen some calendars that give me like anxiety.
Me too.
Like, how do you maintain? I can't maintain my calendar. How do they maintain their calendar, their spouses, their children? I cannot imagine that.
More money for the therapy jar. It's
to
fine. We don't have it together as well as you think. So I feel like, you know, it's interesting. You bring up a point, and I want to just touch back on that for a second. Was this idea of like hanging out? Because obviously it's not like you don't like hide the pictures of your kids from Leigh. She's coming over. It's not like that. But I think like it's interesting because almost the dynamic that you're kind of presenting almost makes me think of like when you want to make plans with like one friend and just spend a little bit of time with them to kind of catch up, and then it turns into like a group hangout. And it's not like you didn't want to see those other people, but like you really actually wanted just to have time and to connect. And I feel like that's maybe like a sort of a thing in a sense, where that emotion is kind of what's maybe missing.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Sorry, my arbitrary, but can I even? But yeah, no, I mean that's because like you probably, your intention is to connect and like have a conversation and you know, do what you intended to do. It's if there's a distraction there, or if it's not really about a genuine conversation in general, that's probably a healthy thing to make sure to like, you know, we talk about that like with my wife, and it's like sometimes like go, you know, she'll go and like grab a coffee with a friend, or like, you know, I'll on, you know, whatever, if I learn how to make plans, I get out of the house and I go, you know, I'll go grab a bite or something, whatever. And it's like, oh, all right, wow, this is good, you know. But I feel like that's something that like, you know, from the standpoint of people with kids, it's probably to like remember to tap into those friendships and reach out and be like, yo, let's go to Starbucks. Let's, you know, even just for like an hour, just to like connect.
But I think also too, at the same time, it's almost like you're on borrowed time, you know, us as parents, you know, and like for someone like Leigh and we have very good friends, Kevin and Suzanne, you know, they have when we hang out with them, they have all the time in the world, and they're very considerate in terms of saying like, hey, are you sure we can do this? Like, when you guys want to leave, we're like, no, because like when we hang out with them, we know that we're there for like we're gonna hang out, So we make sure we have the babysitting and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's just I would think like on your end, Leigh, like what do you feel like us as parents or just families, like people who have families, like what can we do to help incorporate our friends and respect our friends who are choosing to not have children?
I would say the easiest thing is, and actually Rachel does this, I love this, she'll send a text message with like date options. Like, here's some times that work for me and my family. Let me know what works for you. Because I feel like that is the hardest thing. Like the people who I definitely still want to stay connected with and still want to see, I feel like when I do reach out to ask them, they already have their month booked. And I understand why. Like, it's really difficult. So just that, like, idea of, like, going, I thought of Leigh a few times today. I'm going to send her a few dates and be like, hey, can we get together any of those times? Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't work, like, I think the other part of it is that if you have to cancel, and maybe this is a me personal thing, I'm fine with it. Like, I understand why you have to cancel. Like, things come up, things happen. Just with that idea of like it's being rescheduled, it's not canceled, it's just postponed, it's not, and like even Rachel, Michael, James and I have had that where it's like we thought this was going to work out for a weekend and it didn't align, but the first thing we said was, when will we be able to get together? So we just moved it to another day, and like that makes me feel much better. And I don't want parents to feel like they are like not allowed to cancel plans, not allowed, like it's totally fine. Like, I totally understand.
And what about being like included to like every child event or
interesting, so
like family, like like christenings or bar mitzvahs and first birthday parties and baby showers, like what are your feelings?
It's more of a personal thing, and I think you'll get that from your friends without children. Like, some friends without children want to be the fun aunt that's not really related. They want to be in the child's life. And some don't. And not like they don't want to be in the child's life, but they just, I mean, for me, I find that I have to see your child as a person. Like, they have to be a little bit older. They have to have interests. They have to have things that I can connect with for me to be able to engage with that. And that's a me thing. Like, I need to see people. And some people are great with children and want to be around children, even if they don't want to have children. So I think it's just, making sure you know your friends well enough to say whether, like, this one loves being around kids, they want to be in this kid's life, so I'm going to make sure that they're invited to every big event. Mm-hmm. And then I guess on the other hand, when you want to invite people who don't have that experience or don't have that expression towards kids, to make sure that when they're invited to things that there's a mix of people there. So I'm not the only one without children and like, here's all these moms. Mm-hmm. And I think it just helps that if it's like a large enough event where there will be a mix of different people there, then include them.
And what about like do you feel like it's funny because a couple episodes ago we talked about like there was like an article or like whatever it was. I mean, you could say articles. BuzzFeed, I guess, is articles. There was a woman that it was like about like how to almost like when somebody asks an awkward question or like when you have somebody say something, how to like kind of like tone down the situation with like a response that kind of just like gets rid of it right away. And like I feel like there's probably a lot of like assumptions, or we talk about assumption, but I feel like there's probably a lot of like almost getting into your personal space a little bit too much of like people saying like maybe you'll change your mind, or like, oh, you're too young to know the answer of that, or like maybe even people from the medical community, doctors, or like whatever else it is. I feel like
I've had a few
how do you avoid that?
Yeah. So again, like you have to be able to read people. When I'm answering, sometimes I can tell right away whether they want to listen to me, whether they're genuinely interested in my experience and my decision, or whether they're listening just to see if they can counteract what I have to say. Mm-hmm. You can usually tell where that's going.
Like they want to get into it,
Yes.
almost like.
Yes, it's like, oh, you're here for a fight. You're not here because you genuinely are like find this intriguing and want to know more about it.
Right.
So those people who are intrigued, I try to answer their questions as much as I can because I feel like that information is not out there, and to be able to provide it is a gift sometimes. And those people who want to change my mind or want to debate me on this, I just don't. I try not to engage in that at all. The you'll change your mind thing, I'm well past the age right now to change my mind. Like that's a bad decision for me to do, and it's not fair to a child. When I've had one instance with a woman who, like, I can't even remember. I think she was like a friend of a friend kind of thing, who really wanted to get into this with me and said something along the lines of, you'll change your mind. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I know myself very well. That this is not a decision that I made lightly. This is not a decision that I made overnight. And this is not a decision that I have ever considered reversing. Mm-hmm. And, like that pretty much just, okay, that stopped the conversation. It didn't become a debate. And it brought it back to me that I know myself. And this was the assumptions that you're making that I just feel this way right now, or that I, am wishy-washy with important things is not a assumption you should make about others.
Correct. Because I also think, like along the lines, like, oh, you change your mind, and then, like, do you get or have you considered adoption? Have you considered fostering? Have you considered, X, Y, Z? Like, that's still kind of in that vein of, like, pushing this idea.
I have actually never been asked that, like, the further question.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've never been asked it. I have been asked if it was like a medical condition that I couldn't have children.
Right.
And I genuinely don't know the answer. I'm starting to think that maybe I can't have children, but I don't know the answer. And I just never, like, it was never a question of like, oh, okay, well, you can't have children, so maybe you want to adopt children. It was just, oh, you don't want children. Okay.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I did have a doctor, so to make sure that I don't have children, I have an IUD, and I wanted to get that IUD. It was incredibly difficult.
I was going to ask, like, what was that? Yeah, did you feel like was it an uphill battle, like just trying to have that conversation? Wow.
Yes. With a male doctor. Yes, there was conversation about bringing my fiance in to talk with him. I'm like, first off, this is a temporary thing. Like, if at any point I can take it out. So what do we need somebody who's not in my body or near me? Like that, like, no, it's not his decision. He's not coming here to talk to you about this.
Wow.
That's bizarre. Yeah. I'm sorry that you faced that, because
what
that's
a violation
really,
of
policing your body,
Yes. I was like, I ended up seeing 3 different doctors before I found somebody who just, you want that? Okay, let's go. That was it.
As it should be.
Yeah, I mean, it should be as simple as ordering a pizza. Like, it's like, I want this, you can have it.
Sadly,
when can I have
not as easy and nearly not as fun.
I was going to say, meanwhile, quite a understatement of the year. Yeah. Way to go. Way to really show everyone out there what you know, knowledge boys. Holy moly. And the award for guying it up. Way to go, buddy. You're so smart. But like, do you feel like, to flip it on like the positive side, have there been times where you feel like you've been seen and you've been heard and you've been respected?
Oh, definitely I have. Again, my mom, that conversation I had with her, that was amazing. I mean, my brothers, my sister, they have all been amazing. Just that conversation with James when I said, like, hey, I don't want children, worrying that maybe he was going to say he really wants children and that could be a deal breaker. That was amazing to not only be able to say it, but to have it repeated and be like, oh, yeah, I don't want that either. And like being able to bond over that too. That was all amazing experiences.
Did he know that sort of like did he sort of kind of know that? Like, was it a reaction to what you said as like he firmly knew that as an answer? or he kind of had to like think that through a little bit in his head before,
No, he knew that.
That's pretty wild.
It was
in a good
me who
way. I mean, it's
apparently
good
had
to
to
be
work
on the
it.
same page, obviously, right? Be on the same page with
Yeah.
anything. Like, have you
Yeah.
tried to make like an arrangement to like go out to eat, and people are like, I want this, I want that. You're like, great. But you guys made some major life decisions. And you're like, I mean, that's impressive.
Yes. Yeah. And especially considering we got engaged in like 5 months, we had a lot of serious conversations.
Yeah, you
real
guys
fast.
did. I was gonna say, yeah, man. I was there.
Yes.
Not for the engagement part, for the wedding part. Yeah. Can you get this guy to leave? I'm trying to get engaged here. So this has been really cool. I think like it's been a nice opportunity to sit down with you. And I know that you're not like you're not like the representative of all dinks in the world. That sounded like very insulting because saying the word dinks now sounds like I'm like using a slang term or something. But no, I feel like it's been like a nice chance for you to, shed some light on it, because without a doubt, like there's got to be a lot of people that make it personal by themselves, or like make it about ways that they're nervous maybe to say the wrong thing, or like, maybe even how you brought up to break plans, or just ways to interact. And like, you're still the same person as you always were, but maybe like people don't necessarily get that when they're at different life stages. So I think this is really cool.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course. I do actually really appreciate being able to share, because as I said, it's not often that I'm asked about this. It's not often that I feel like I have that space to share. So, and growing up, I wish I had heard more people speak about this. And even as Sarah said, like, having that experience of seeing adults while you're a child having different lifestyles is very valuable.
That's amazing. Well, thank you. And I appreciate all the babysitting you're about to do. No, I'm kidding. So this is good.
Oh, I'm sorry. My calendar is booked.
Oh, awkward.
Look at that. Only when they have developed a personality.
Yes.
So the question this week is, since having children, how have your friendships changed? We'd love to hear from you if you'd like to answer this question, have comments, questions for the show. You can get in touch with us one of 3 ways. 1, you can leave a message on our Hey the Parents voicemail line at 559-537-5437 or 559-LAY-KIDS if you're feeling French. 2, you can email the show at heytheparents@gmail.com. Or 3, check the show notes for our Instagram and other socials. So we're back for this part of the show. It's called Time to Unplug. This is where we talk about the things that are going outside of the children, because sometimes we just have to have something for ourselves or with our spouses. It gives us a chance to decompress, because you'll be a better we if you take care of me. Sarah D., what do we got?
Okay, so an oldie but a goodie. There is a novel that I finished up, and it is called Take My Hand. I think it was written in like 2022, and it is about a African American woman who is a nurse. Her name is Sybil Townsend, and she is out to make a difference in her community, and particularly she goes through a bunch of things with her family, with her life, and obviously being a Black woman in the medical field. It was an excellent book. I don't want to spoil it. It was well written. It's in the vein of like The Help, and like during that time period of like the 1950s. It's definitely a great book. Pick it up, read it, love it, recommend it.
I love it. All right, Leigh, since this is the perfect segue of it gives sometimes you have to have something to do with outside of the children. This is great. So what do you bring? What do you bring with you?
To come up with.
Like, where do I begin? What do you
Give
got?
us suggestions.
So I have just started reading the Witcher. I already read the Witcher series, but reading the RPG book. So our friends have decided to start a regular session of playing the Witcher game, and so we're getting into that now. I'm really excited. We started making characters this weekend, and yeah, that's going to be really fun. I like to, again, it's really hard to schedule even with people who don't have children. So we're starting out with just like episodic adventures, so anybody can come in and
that's
go.
really
They don't
cool.
have to be consistently there. And eventually, like, if we find that we have a regular crowd coming for each game, then we can start a campaign. So
How long does it
excited
take
about that.
to make characters for that? Does it take a long time, or like is it pretty quick?
Like 4 hours.
It depends.
Oh, wow.
Well, because there was the
We got James here too, by the way.
Hold on. Yeah, but I was just going to say, this is James Candelino.
Oh, hi.
What's interesting about this RPG is that, unlike other ones, that are written by like a staff or at least
Right.
get play tested a lot. This was written by a couple, and so like there are some things that had to be fixed after the fact, or like didn't cross their mind, but like now when you're trying to play it, that's been interesting.
And you guys having fun with it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was fun. It's who are you waving to?
Oh, sorry. Sarah's son just walked by.
Oh.
You're not going to sleep well tonight. You were like, what the hell is happening right now?
So yeah, we're looking forward to playing that. And I was a huge fan of like the X-Files and like the Monster of the Week. So
cool.
the idea of playing a game that'll be like a Monster of the Week for a while is really exciting.
That's cool too. So you get friends like tap in, tap out, and not feel like the pressure of like committing to some long-term thing.
Exactly.
Speaking of long-term things, I have to talk about it because last week we were all over the place. We talked about Mr. Beast games, but I definitely want to talk about Squid Games because we are halfway. There's a lot. I need a person behind me now. We are now Rachel and I are about halfway through Squid Games, and it is beyond just for us, not for the kiddies. Although Juju, we don't know you've been watching lately, buddy. Sarah's son is right behind her. We had a funny conversation. But yeah, do we want to talk about it because people that probably saw first season on Netflix, they probably saw there would be a second Squid Games. It looked like possibly they just jumped the shark. But I'm happy to report, and I know that from what I've heard from people, it does like just come to like a quick ending where people are kind of like a little unsettled with like it just sort of like not feeling like a complete series. But there have been some discussions of the show coming back over the summer. So I kind of am envisioning this as almost like a half of a season. But I will say like it's really cool. I'm really into it because it does like kind of go a little meta about the games. And we see it from a different perspective, and it's not just like a money grab for Squid Games, like a repeat of season 1. So I'm really enjoying it. It's fun. So I will say that I probably can't say much because it is definitely one of those shows that you could spoiler. It has a lot of spoilers very quickly. But if you enjoyed the first season, and if you don't speak Korean and you got to go with the subtitles that don't match what they're saying, go for it. It's cheesy. It's awesome. Nobody knows why they don't match. I don't know, but it's great, and we're having a lot of fun. I think we're just about out of time on this episode. It's been so much fun hanging out with Leigh, and we had James and the cat, and we had Juju from behind Sarah, and my 2 kids came in for a hug and a kiss. So we had a little time to chat about all kinds of things, but most of all, it's been fun to take a little moment to shed some spotlight on things that people don't often get a chance to talk about. Because sometimes there's some misunderstandings and miscommunication could lead to a breakdown in friendship. And we're glad that we had the chance to bring on Leigh because she and James are awesome. And we'd like to have a little moment to talk to her. And James has a cat in his hand, so things are going on. So we'll take a special moment to thank our listeners and supporters for donating to the show. If you want to help support this show so we can keep making episodes like this one, we have a link to donate in the show notes. If you don't have the means to do so, we would really appreciate it when you tell your friends or family about the podcast so we keep reaching more listeners. Maybe we can learn from them, they can learn from us in our growing community. And if you get a chance, please leave us a review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We can't wait to explore this parenting thing again with you next week in Hey the Parents, because every week it's an honest discussion about raising kids. Don't forget to hug your kids and charge those Chromebooks. That's new for me, for Sarah, and for Leigh, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you and bye.
Hey Parents is produced by Mike Levine, Sarah Deservines, and me, Michael Haidt. I edit mix our show. Our intro voice recording was done by the one and only Coltrane. If you like our show, we hope you consider going to our show notes and help support the podcast. Check the show notes for social media information and contacts, and we look forward to seeing you next time. I don't know why I'm making a big circle of my arms right now, but I'm doing that. I do that, I think, every episode. I start stretching at the end. It's very weird.
You do.
Like a giant Y. I feel like a Muppet.